and share my screen.
We're doing this again?
No, you don't get to do it again. We could try a bunch though. Yeah. Now, before we get started with our code, do you want to open your OneNote document in case you have any notes you want to make? Now, to start out with your OneNote document, you probably want to create a new tab. You know, this is still chapter 3, because chapter 3 has decision making and looping all mixed together. And in our book, they actually talk about looping structures and stuff before they get to decision making, which is a little different than any book I've ever seen. We didn't do that in class, but I knew you would be reading the chapter as we went. So, unexpected closing curly brace on line 32. That's what the majority of problems that I see are when we're just getting started, are those unexpected closing curly braces. So watch them. I sent a couple of REPL assignments back to people who were really angry, really upset, and I'm sure I just fanned the flames because I sent things back like, count your curly braces. You know, they're probably saying all sorts of things and calling me some wonderful names. That's fine. They still need to count those curly braces because they're not matching up right. Makes your code do all sorts of crazy things if your curly braces aren't in the right place. So don't let it be a problem for you. There's some curly braces. They're all in the right place. We've got somebody annotating here. Wasn't that good? Very good.
I know what room does it too, because they told me.
He knows where it's happening. So let's start Open Visual Studio. You got it. We want to do some while loops today, so we're going to work on some while loop practice. When you look at your stuff in Canvas, take a look here. Maybe. If you look at Canvas and look at our modules for this week, we're working with looping structures. Next week is our Unit 1 exam. When you look at the Unit 1 exam information, you have a practice exam. The practice exam you can take as many times as you want, get comfortable with the question format, see how things are set up. Our actual Unit 1 exam will use the same question banks, so there shouldn't be any differences in the questions that you see, except that you might not see them all if you're doing a practice exam. We also have a hands-on along with that, and your hands-on assignment will be due the following Tuesday, just like our other assignments. Now, I'm saying all of this kind of hesitantly because I don't know if we're really going to be able to have this exam next Thursday. We have quite a bit to do with our looping structures. So right now I want you to plan on that.
Next Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday, but we might have to put it off until the following Monday, depending on how things are going. So let's just kind of keep that in mind, that you should be preparing, but focus more on getting assignments done, because we might just put that one off. Or we might just not have it. The only reason that I don't want to not have it is because a percentage of your grade is based on those unit exams. So we want to have them, or else you don't have scores for that. So we'll be working on it, figuring out what the best thing to do is. For you guys, since we have had some challenges this semester so far. All right, let's create a new project. Now I want to create a new project here. And first, I want to make sure that I'm on C# and a console app with the .NET framework. Down at the bottom, double check your location, make sure that it hasn't changed. Remember, with these computers in our classroom, sometimes they get imaged without us knowing it. So always double check and make sure that the save location hasn't switched back to this default on the C drive. Mine has. So I know this is, I swear this instructor machine gets re-imaged like once a week. I don't know who works on it at night, but it gets all messed up. So mine is actually in the wrong place. I'll leave it there because we're working on a test one. But for this application, I'd like to name things a little bit differently. For our solution name, let's put in CH3 while loops. And that's going to be the top level name, our solution name. But I want this first project to be named something a little different so that I can have multiple projects in here. And I want it to just be basic while. So now I have two different names here. The solution name is what's going to get given to my folder in the solution. And the name is what my project will be named. So let's click OK when we're ready. The add to source control is like if you were using GitHub or some other source control component, and we won't start using that until we get done with Hypergrade. So it'll be like, you get to leave Hypergrade, but now you're going to do source control. So we want to make sure to lose one as we gain the other so you don't have too much to worry about. But I should be ready to click OK. Where is your Solution Explorer? Oops, I got to name mine a little different, don't I? So I'll make mine while loops 102, since I already did that this morning. You shouldn't have had that problem. Did you find your Solution Explorer? Remember, under your View menu, Solution Explorer is like 2 or 3 down. If you can't find it, it'll show up. Okay, so now let's double check. This is pretty much what we should look like. Up here, our solution name is Chapter 3 while loops. Underneath that, this first project, the C# icon, is named basic while. Just look like that. Everything look okay? Got it all separated. All right, in our basic while, let's rename our program.cs. We don't want everything to all have that same name. So I'm going to right click, choose rename, and I'm going to name this program.cs basic while, and I'm going to make sure the .cs stays there, because if I were to wipe that out, I would get everything all messed up. Now, when it asks me, do you want to rename that everywhere? I'm going to say, yes, I do. And renamed everywhere. So now, instead of program.cs, we see our basic while.cs file, and notice it's changed that class name to be the same thing. Beautiful. So let's do a little one. I would like to do that one that made everybody laugh, while true. Now, a while statement in C# has the exact same format as an if statement in C#. It starts out with the keyword while and then has a condition. The while has a body, so it's going to have opening and closing curly braces after it. It's never going to end with a semicolon because it's the kind of statement that has a body instead. Now, like an if statement, I only need the opening and closing curly braces if I have more than one line of code in my loop body. So let's make this while statement print out one line. I want to go up and fix my using statements. Let's make sure and add our using static system.console. And then in my while statement, I'm going to use a write line, and I'm just going to output this message loop body, because that's what we've got here is the body of our loop. I'll go ahead and put a read key statement after our loop body, so that we can have that console pause, but it's not going to matter because what we've created here is an infinite loop. It's a loop that's never going to end. Let's run it and see. Now, with my console, it's hard to tell, but it is actually generating new lines that say loop body very quickly because it's running at the speed of the processor. So it's generating lots of them. Yes, sir?
I don't suppose I could get you to move the command window over to the right side so I can see the code. I'm just watching through the Zoom.
Yeah, you can do that. The move per command window.
The command window was in front of the code and I couldn't see it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. I always want to know if you could do that with Zoom. That would be super cool. I like it. I like it. I was just like, okay. So now we can't really tell if this loop body is actually coming up. And there's one reason that I have this in the way for Dominic, so I'm going to put it back in the way. It's because I want you to look at this diagnostic screen over here. I have this infinite loop running. Notice how my process is eating more and more memory as it runs, right? And if I watch it for a little while, whoops, I'll see it kind of chunk up on that graph as it goes up a little bit higher, that it's eating even more megabytes of memory on my machine. Why is that? It's not doing anything. Yeah, it is. It is running through repeatedly, doing a branch to a certain location, and then it's writing out this line on the console. So it's actually doing work, and it's doing it repeatedly. But as you'll watch the memory, you'll see that the longer it runs, the more memory it's consuming, which is true of an infinite loop if we were to create one accidentally in our code. Now, how could I close this console window? I could use the X. How else?
Hit a key.
What kind of key?
Escape.
Escape? Would escape work?
Maybe.
Try it. Try it. Whenever you're in a console like this, if you want to cancel out, it's Control-C is what we really want to use to cancel out of a console.
Keyboard interrupt.
Right. Alt F4 is going to close it, but if you use Alt F4 or you use some sort of the red X, you're not closing it cleanly. So what about all that used memory? Is it going to stay used or is it going to get cleaned up? You don't know because you're not closing it cleanly. But if you Control-C and break out of the process and then close that console screen in a clean way, you know Windows has an opportunity to clean up all that memory. Yes, sir?
I don't know why. My thing says namespace basic while. It's got this blue underline on it. And I looked at it and it says namespace does not correspond with file location. Should be basic while. They're spelled the exact same way, but it's saying that it doesn't match.
There's just so much help. You can't do anything with it.
I'm just going to ignore it. It doesn't seem to be so.
Yeah, let's fix up our while loop to be a little bit more annoying. This is a great while loop. What if we add a counter? I'm going to create a variable here that's going to be an integer, and I'm going to call it counter. Now, in our code, I'd like to print out that counter's value. So I'm going to print it before my words loop body. So I'm going to add that parameter in. And then I'm going to say I want you to use counter there to print that. Now, right away, I get an error. And it says, you can't use this variable counter because you've never given it a value. So what do you want me to do with it? I agree. I'm going to go ahead and set counter equal to 0. Now, this is one of those areas that's just a little vague. We all have seen from the textbook, or maybe not, depending on what part of the textbook you were looking at, that integers are always initialized to 0 by C#, but yet the compiler is forcing us to initialize it ourselves. And that's just a thing that they do so that your code will be self-documenting, force you to initialize it. So I would like for this counter to change. Let's run this right now. I'm getting 0. I need to do something to my counter. So I'm going to close this again. So what I could do is add plus plus to my counter name. And what that says is every time you run this line of code, add to this counter variable. So plus plus means add one to the counter, add one to that variable. Now we should see something changing, right? Now we can actually see something. Those words didn't really mean much to us because we weren't seeing much change. But now you can see how quickly executing that loop goes really fast, right? And it's having to slow down internally to write this stuff out to the console. So if it wasn't having to write out to the console, we would see that counter incrementing even faster. But it's moving really quick. So that looks good. Let's close it. Now I want to run it again, and I want you to really notice where it starts. Let's see if you can tell. It happens so fast, you really can't tell. So I'm not going to worry about that at this point, because it'll just make us crazy. All right, I want to keep this project the way it is. What can I do? I've heard tell that there's some really raunchy code you can do to get out of a loop if you're tired of looping. Has anybody heard of that keyword you can break? That's true. A break is a form of a go-to statement. It alters the normal flow of your code. So it's very, very bad. We don't want to do that. A break statement takes us completely out of our loop and we continue executing on the next line of code. There's another path altering statement that we can use in a loop, and that's continue. Continue ignores the rest of the loop body and takes you back to the while statement to reevaluate. Both of those commands are considered go-to statements, and they're really confusing to people later on if they're looking at your code. So we'll see break statements used often for video game programming. That's fine, because a game loop is going to be a while true loop. A robot loop might be a while true loop. So in those kind of situations, we might see a break, and that's acceptable because that's when we know to break out of this loop. But for our type of programming, usually if we see somebody code a break, that means they got themselves backed up into a corner and they're not exactly sure how to get out of it. So they just throw a break command in there and that takes them out of that loop.
You're getting a weird error. Value assign is not using the execution path. I don't see where, I mean, I know it's not using those,
Sorry. I should bring the console. We created the counter outside of our while loop.
Right.
It's just noticing so many things. All right, so anytime you have a break or a continue, you want to reevaluate and see where maybe you could make that loop a little bit more efficient. So let's try another one. I want to keep this loop the way it is because this is a nice basic while loop for you. So let's create a new project. I want to keep it in the same solution so that you guys can just open this solution and see lots of different examples of looping constructs. So click on your solution itself up here in Solution Explorer. Now there's other ways to do this, but for us, it's best to just right-click on our solution and choose Add New Project. Now, when we add a new project, it looks the same as that screen where we created our project, but it's a little different. Notice down at the bottom, it only has that one name. What do you want to name this project? Well, this project, let's call it While Loop Fun. Yay, fun. Now, see how that changes your Solution Explorer look? Now you've got one C# project that was basic while, and a new C# project that's our new while loop fun. Notice what you've got there. Now I want to rename that program.cs so that we can have them matching again. So let's right click, rename, and name this one while loop fun. Say yes, we want to rename it everywhere. So for this loop, we'd like to ask our user what they like to do for fun. So we'll just ask them repeatedly things that they think are fun. So I want to set up some variables. And the recommendation has always been try to declare all your variables at the top of your method. But that's kind of a thing that's changing. We see things change. That's all right. But let's say that we're going to try to do that. And we're going to declare a variable to hold the answer that the user gives us. I'm going to use a while true loop to start. And for this while loop, I'm going to have more than one line of code. So I'm going to put my opening and closing curly braces. And of course, you could just press tab after you type while, and it'll do a whole bunch of that for you. Now I want to write out a prompt, not like that. And my prompt is going to say, let's see, I'll start with a new line, and I'll say, what would you like to do for fun?
Why would you just type right and then parentheses it does that auto fill?
Well, one thing is it looks like we're missing our using static system console. So let's put that in. And I think that's what was making it try to find something there for us. We'll see if that's better. Okay, so our write statement isn't read anymore. That helps a lot. Now, whenever our user tells us what they would like to do for fun, we're going to read that into our answer. And then let's just go ahead and do a write statement and output what they said. So I'll do a new line, and I'll say, you would like to give them an answer here, and then output our answer as that parameter. So great. Now I'm going to make sure that my closing curly braces are all straight. So I'm going to go to this purple one, the one that is my innermost closing curly brace, and I'm going to label it. It's the end of that while. I'll email those VS4 people and say, boy, it would be really cool if the comments were the same color. Huh? And then I'm going to label the next one. That's the end of our main method. The one after that, my pink, is the end of this class. And lastly, the last one is the end of that solution, or namespace, I should say. Now I want to put the read key statement outside of our while loop, but still in our main method. That's why I wanted to label these. So let's open a line that is right after our end of while and put in our read key. Because if we put it within our while, it would stop every single time we executed. We can try that. Now, are we all good? Let's try it. Well, that's not what I expected to see. How about you? Now, our problem is, if you look over at Solution Explorer, notice that the basic while project name is bold. That means that's the one that's going to run if I click the Start button. I'd like to change that. So I'm going to right-click on my while loop fun project and choose Set as Startup Project. It's almost to the middle. Now that I click that Set as Startup Project, you should see that our while loop fun project is bold now. So now if I run, I'll get the right project. What would you like to do for fun? Sleep. It says you would like to sleep. That is true. What else would I like to do for fun? I like to swim. Well, that would be fun. Nap. How many different ways can I describe sleeping? Lots of fun. Yes, I'm going to be fun. How about program? That would be fun. Okay. How do I end this thing? There's no way to end it as a user. I'm just going to have to Control-C or close out or something. Not very nice. Okay, before we go on, is everybody's working?
No.
Why not? Let's get them working. So look at the person beside you, help them. See if you can get it going. That's not showing up on mine. I thought you guys had run this. What have you got? Is yours okay?
Yeah, that's fine, except I don't know why this one says it was unloaded.
Oh, okay. So it shouldn't cause you any trouble.
No, it works just fine. I just don't know why it says it was
Why it says
unloaded.
that? I'm not sure. What have we got? What's the matter?
I don't know what else.
They all charge me. How much we want payment fee?
Really?
It's not charging. Although we're gonna charge you. Do you have a backup, credit? I have a backup card, that no longer exists.
Do you have trouble?
Oh.
No, this is just on the Zoom. That's
So I
just,
had,
Uh-huh.
I used to be in
You
their
said
state,
it wasn't working?
and then they got bought out by our guys.
No.
That card, it's needed.
Oh,
I got a new card.
That's when they always kind of, it's like the
Smell.
like hypergraze, like here, it always.
Yeah, well, I just-
goes
Sure.
hypergraze.
I had ready. Yeah, like their payments. I had ready to know.
Never. It's an old school program in Detroit. We don't use it in a normal basis. So yes, it's like a weird thing because we don't write content programs anymore. We only write GUI programs, but we get started on our programs. When we're learning the program, it definitely has things that are unusable.
Isn't
We
it?
don't use those things anymore. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I know
But like when it gives you an
I
error,
thought it's console-based stuff.
like so down at the error list, it gives you. So I mean, I guess my question would be like, in that corner, you can go, okay, there's something wrong. How do you know when that's something that's acceptable? It says unreachable code detected. And it's for that reason. So, you know, I guess I just know in the future, oh, the children have to read, you know, to ignore that. I mean, know what else.
Because originally I didn't have the card when I first signed up for school.
It's saying
Unreachable, that's what it means.
so it knows that we've created it. And that's why it's really good
Okay.
point. That's why.
So it's
And
just
that's why
saying
that
that-
while is in red. So as soon as we fix it.
Is that how you'll know that that's an infinite loop? So you can tell I accidentally did it. It's red.
That, it's good. It's actually telling. And I hadn't noticed. Yeah, that's why I got it wrong for record. Everybody else good?
what are you doing?
Okay, really cool stuff that I didn't notice. Our while loop, because we created this infinite loop, that's why it's red. So the IntelliSense and all of the different tools that we're using in Visual Studio are highlighting that. This is an invalid while loop. It knows it is because while true, although it will work, is going to create an infinite loop. So if you look at your error messages, That's what we were just looking at in the back. In your errors,
Copy and paste all this.
you should see these 2 warnings.
Plug it in instead of
Unreachable code detected.
your errors.
That's because the compiler, whatever you guys read, the compiler says you can never get to this read key because this isn't an infinite loop. Okay? So think about what it's telling you. Took me a minute to really acclimate myself to what was going on there. It's like infinite loop, so this code is unreachable because we're never going to get out of this loop. So as soon as we fix our loop, we should see those warnings go away. But notice that's why we're getting them. So really, really good. Now what I'd like to do is change our while loop to use a sentinel value to end our loop. Now what is a sentinel? It's like a guard, right? It's like the guard at the wall or the guard of the military base. And that's what this sentinel is going to do for our loop. It's going to, well, actually, in this case, we're going to use a Boolean. I'm lying. How about use a Boolean? And then we'll use a sentinel next time. So I want to create a Boolean variable. And my Boolean variable is going to be called try another. And I'm going to start out with it set to true. So now instead of saying while true, I'm going to use our variable and say while try another.
Here's a question.
Mine's giving me, spitting out an error that reads along the lines of program was more than 1 2 defined.
Do you have 2 main methods?
Yeah.
That would be a problem. Okay, so we got our Boolean declared, and our while loop's still in red, so it knows that we still have an infinite loop, because we didn't really change a thing, did we? We still have a while true loop going here. We just have this Boolean that we created instead of using the keyword true. But we didn't really change anything. It looks like we did. So what could we do to get the user to get out of this loop? What if we ask them to maybe enter the word done, enter done to end? Now I'm going to put that on my prompt so that they can just type in that word done if they want to be done. Now we need to go ahead and read in whatever they put, but then we can add an if statement. And in our if statement, we can say, is the answer that they gave us equal to the word done? If so, let's set our try another Boolean equal to false, because they don't want to enter any other ones. Else, we'll go ahead and write out that message. Now, because we're controlling this loop with just a Boolean, we're still getting that kind of, we're glitchy message, but we're not, we're fine. So now we've kind of put in a way to get done, right? So if the user types the word done, which could be considered a sentinel value, but we're still using a Boolean to control it in this ugly if statement, we can get everything to work just right. Let's make sure it's all working now. We should be able to put our first fun thing, sleep, nap, nap. And then I'm going to say done. Now, when I say done, we are finally executing our read key. So that's why it's sitting here with this cursor blinking. It's on that read key statement now, waiting for me to do something. Is everybody's work okay? Good, 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 good.
My done is red.
Your done is red. Is it within double quotes? fix these things up. Just, woohoo. I don't know who's done that. Very, very cute. All right, so that's a good loop. That loop looks great. Everything works. Is there anything in there that we need to comment? Talk about anything in there? Do you have any questions about it? Yes, sir?
You don't need the brackets for the else statement.
Nope, as long as we just have that one line of code, we don't need it.
But if you wanted to put in more lines, you would need to put it in. And it wouldn't hurt to put them in. Anyway,
Right,
just
it
as you want.
never hurts to put them in anyways. And if you want to always use them, that's just great.
So yeah, if it's just the one line, you can get away with it. But if you're not sure, go ahead and just put it in anyways.
Yeah, and if you do put them in, then you don't have the trouble of trying to add them in later, because they can be not as easy to add in later, even with the ID, because it tries to do them both for you and gets everything all mixed up. Okay, so let's keep this looping logic and let's create another one. This time, we're going to, again, right-click on our solution and add a new project. And we would like this project, new project. Oh, he's on the solution.
There you go. Right click on that.
Let's name this one while loop sum. So instead of fun, we're going to sum. As programmers, we have to do a lot of looping and summing of things. If you think about your bank account, what do they do to come up with all of your balance? They loop through all of the things that you've done this month and add them or delete them from your previous balance. So we do it a lot. Okay, in this new project, I want to rename program.cs. So let's rename this while loop sum. And say yes. Now we can right here, go ahead and right click and set this as our startup project. I always enjoy that fun of being surprised by the wrong one, but I have to do things to entertain myself. Might be better for you. Okay, so for this loop, we're going to be asking for a number. We're going to ask for a number over and over and add it to a sum. So let's start out by declaring some variables. In this project, if I did an IPO chart, for this, we would say our input is going to be like an integer. Our processing is going to be adding it to our sum. And then our output would be our total. So we don't really have a lot going on here, right? I mean, it's not like super heavy duty. We don't have many variables that we need. So all we need is a place to hold our user input. Let's hold our user input in a string, because we've seen this past week that it's best in C# if we have a string variable to hold that input so that we can validate it as numeric. Then we'll probably want an integer to hold that user data. We'll need an integer to hold our sum. And since this is a sum that's kind of a running total, we're going to be adding to it as we go. We'll go ahead and start it with an initial value of 0. Bless you. Now in our program, we're going to ask the user to enter -1 when they're done. So that's going to be our sentinel value. So I'm going to set up a constant value is a string. Whenever we're programming in any sort of language, we always want to use these constant values for data items that aren't going to change. When we say that this is a constant, memory is allocated in such a way that the operating system knows it's not going to be updated, so it's much more efficient than allocating memory to a variable that could constantly be being updated, right? Because we don't have to worry about it. Now, the other thing about a constant is, probably seen it in your 120 class, but just as a review, we always name constants with all uppercase letters. So that's kind of consistent across languages, seems to be. And we want the sentinel value to be -1. So I'm setting this up as a variable because I can set it up as a constant. Anybody else that looks at this program is going to know what that sentinel value is, that it ends the loop, or they'll be able to figure it out pretty quickly. If they want to change it, they can real easily change it in just this one place instead of having to change it in 5 or 6 places throughout the code. So be thinking about it as we type this in. Every place we use this variable would be a place that had to be manually updated if we wanted to change -1, and we had that everywhere in our code. The last thing is, it's terrible programming practice to put literals like this in our code. They should be in constants. So anytime you find yourself typing an if statement, if this equals double quote something, that's a literal value that really shouldn't be inside that code. It should be pulled out as a variable. And it's just a good coding practice so that people that come along after you can find those items a lot easier and get them fixed. So for this program, the first thing that we're going to do is ask the user for an integer. Oops, I need to make sure my using static is up here. So I'll put in a write statement, and I'm going to start with the \n. Please enter an integer. Bless you.
Thank you.
And then I'm going to put with my message, enter. Why do I have that box? Can you see my cursor being that big box? If I type, look, it's doing weird things. Look, it erased that double quote instead of inserting. What is that big box? Insert. Thank you. So remember, don't freak out if that happens. That's one of those ones that can really cost people time. Okay, so I think I finally got my message formatted properly. Get it a little bit bigger here. Oh, there it is. How's that? Please enter an integer. Enter 0. Oh, that's what I wanted. To quit. And then I want my parameter here. What do I want them to enter to quit? Our sentinel. And that is like one of those knowledge things that's been passed down from the Y2K conversion. They always laugh about it, saying it was a real joke. Well, it made a lot of people a lot of money, so it was really fun. And we found out that anytime people code like this, their programs are easier to maintain than if that's buried down in there. So just a good handy thing for us to do. So after we prompt our user, let's read it. We're going to read it into our variable user num. It's a string, so we can read that data in. Now I'm going to do kind of a weird thing to people that are beginning, but I'm going to leave this initial write outside of the while loop. And now I'm going to create a while loop, and I'm going to say while that user number that they enter is not equal our sentinel value, we're going to repeat this loop body. Now what I want to do for each of the numbers that they give us, we're going to print it out. So let's first convert it. We're going to set our int num equal to, or convert to int 32 using our user num. After we convert it, let's write it out. Let's say something helpful like number added, and then we'll output their number int num. And then we need to add the number to our sum. So our formula says sum equals sum plus integer, but we have a shorthand way we can do that. We can use the plus equal operator. So we can say sum, which is the number that we want as an answer, plus equal int num, and that will, in effect, do that formula there. It'll take the value of sum and increase it by the value of int num. Now I want to label my closing curly braces before we go any further. First, our end of while. The end of our main method. End of our class. And finally, the end of our namespace. Now I want to save all, because whenever we're working with looping structures, we could accidentally create one of those infinite loops, right? We did it on purpose at first so that you could see an infinite loop, but that infinite loop that we created was I/O bound. It's an I/O bound loop because it kept outputting to the console. So there was momentary lapses there where the processor wasn't processing that loop, and we were able to control C and get rid of it. We could also have a CPU bound loop. And in a CPU bound loop, that would be if we were in some sort of infinite loop with a statement like this, like just a calculation. It would keep running over and over, and it would be running so fast and never pausing that it would be hard to even get the attention of the processor to let it cancel our program. So because we can accidentally create loops like that could cause us to lose code or changes, we always want to save often when we're looping. We can create a big mess without even realizing it. This one, for example. Now I want to put in a read key statement, so I'm going to put that again after my while, but before the end of my main method.
Now, how come this while is still red?
Let's run it and see. Is it still infinite? It starts out asking me for an integer. That looks good. Ah, look, it's so smart, isn't it? So it is still an infinite loop. Why is that? Yeah, we don't have any way to end it. We just read that one time and then we didn't do anything else. So we're going to have to read again at the end of our loop. So let's copy those 2 lines of code, or 3 really. I don't. Good question though. Now let's paste them here and I'll show you why. So in our last program, you saw where we just prompted for input within our loop. And so we had to put that if statement in after we read what the user typed in to decide if we should continue executing our loop or not. Well, that can get really messy. If we do it this way, where we do a priming read before our loop, and then we do a read again at the end of our loop, then we can ultimately control that loop without having to add additional logic. We don't need any if statements. We don't need anything, because now as soon as the user types something in, the next thing we're doing is checking to see if they typed in -1. If they did, we won't execute that loop again. So we're going to be a much better off structurally by doing that priming read. Let's try it. So I'm going to start out with an integer. I should be able to just keep adding them. I'll finally put my -1, and then it exits my loop and it's sitting there stuck. Very good. So now I didn't have to do any sort of if logic or anything inside that loop to end it. It's all just nice and clean because I did the priming read before I went into the loop. So my loop was built expecting to start with new input. So let's use it to actually validate our numbers. Right now, if somebody types in a bad number, we're going to cancel. Yes, sir? Did you have a question, Alex? Alex, did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Saw your hand go up. I thought you did. All right. So let's do it. Right now, we just have this conversion where we're converting our number. That's going to blow up or cause a runtime error if we type in something invalid. Do you want to make sure? Let's try it. Now, if I type in a bad number first in my priming read, it cancels. If I run it a little bit longer and type in a bad number inside my loop, doesn't matter, still cancels. Everybody getting it to cancel? So let's fix that. Instead of just doing this convert here, let's use our if statement with the try parse. If,
Real quick, how do you get it to stop again?
Control C.
Even when it goes back into your code?
What's it doing? Sorry it got so hot in here. It's like it gets really, really hot and then really, really cold. It doesn't really do anything. It didn't do that before Christmas break, sorry. I'll yell at them. They love hearing from me. But I'm not just going to die. You guys are all trying to think here, and it's like 120 degrees.
I have a networking class and it was 210 and the AC never turned off. They said that if it turned off, it'd probably catch on fire.
Oh, no. So how, was it really cold in there? Really cold?
Yeah, especially whenever it snowed outside.
Okay, I'm going to put in the int.tryParse, and the number that we're validating is user num, or the string. And if it's valid, we want that output to go into our int num variable. Now I'm going to use some curly braces here, because if that number is, I'm going to get rid of the exclamation point. If it's a valid number, I want to write the message about it being added and add it to our sum. And I'm going to close our curly braces there. Now, if it's not a valid number, I want to write out a message that says invalid integer, please try again. So let me zoom out a little bit so we can look at this whole while loop now. We're still red. It's just dumb, dumb, dumb. It's like everything outside of our while. It's like, you're never going to reach that code. We will, we will.
Just stop recording for a second.
Sure. Whatever pleases you.
It might just be the colors that are used for loops.
I don't think so. I think it's red.
Mine's not red and I don't have the color thing, so I think it's just the color.
The color
Mine's
thing.
not giving
So maybe it is just making it red, the color thing. Okay, so let's look at this. We have a priming read before our loop. Then our while loop says, while the user number is not equal to the sentinel, is our loop going to execute the first time? If we ensure that we have things set up properly as we go into this loop, that it's going to execute, because we would like it to execute, right? We do, unless our user types in -1, which in that case we wouldn't want to do the loop, right? Because they're saying, no, I don't really want to enter anything. So otherwise, we have everything set properly, so it should begin our loop. Now, the first thing within our loop is checking our input data to see if it's valid. If it's valid, we're going to output a message and add it to our sum. If it's not valid, we're going to put out a message saying, hey, it's not valid. Either way, whether it was valid or not, we're going to prompt the user to enter another integer and read it. As soon as we read it, we'll start our while loop body again. We'll be back up here at the if statement. Was their input valid? If so, use it. Otherwise, write out a message, ask them for another number, read it. Was it valid? If so, use it. Otherwise, write out a message, ask them for another number. So we have nice, clean code here. A couple of things to notice. When you guys are looking around at other code and an example code, you'll see a lot of try-parse statements that have while loops. Again, that's not properly formed because we're going to end up having to do a bunch of logic to get out of that while loop and prompt our user for data again and do all these things, where if we just properly form a while loop in the first place, we don't have to worry about doing all of those things. So are we all working? Right now we've got some invalid data code put in, so we should be able to test this time and make sure that invalid data doesn't cause a runtime error. So I'm going to run it. 5, 7, 4, 3. That all looks good. -1 doesn't get subtracted out. That would be a logic error, right? And then I'm going to run it again this time. I'll put in some numbers and then an invalid number. Oh, invalid integer. Please try again. Please enter an integer. Enter -1 to quit. Invalid integer. Please try again. So everything seems to work nice and smooth, just the way we want. We're prompting our user for input. We're validating the input and continuing on. Yes, sir?
Would it be appropriate, do you think, to have some sort of message at the end of outside the loop after the fact to make it a little clear we're done with the loop now when you're actually using the program?
We need something there. What we need is to output our sum, right? So we're really missing that. Let's add that in because yes, it would. And we should have that. We want to write out a message about the total. So I'll put a backslash at the beginning of that. The sum of the values is, oops, there it came back, and my sum. I just left that out on me. I was like going. So we should see that now. Let's run it. And we should see that whether we enter invalid data or not. It shouldn't impact us. Once we enter -1, we should see our total. And make sure that that looks right. I had 10, 21. So I didn't get that -1 accidentally added in. Everything looks good. I think that looks really nice, and that's really a great sample program for us because you have so many instances where you need input data. And after our unit exam, we'll finally get to methods and we'll be able to clean things up a little bit more even with some other options. I want to create a Kahoot real quiz or survey real fast. Hang on for me just for a second, I know. I'm just going to call it survey and see if I can get it to work. Making me, oh, stop it. Okay, so in this Kahoot, I'm going to ask you one question. The question is, what do you guys think about doing the Unit 1 exam as an at-home test? Now, I want you to think about that before you answer, because it's really easy to just right off the top of your head say, yes, yes. But remember now, that means that that's going to be taking up more of your at-home time instead of getting it out of the way here. So there's good things and bad things about doing it that way. So use your real name, because this is one that I'm going to actually look at. So delete it or change your name if you put something silly in there, because I don't care what Nixon's thoughts are on this at all. Huh? It'll be in Canvas. So
Does it have to be full name?
no, just so I know you're really part of the class,
My
because
full name
Tricky
doesn't fit.
Dick isn't in here. And Monica's not either. So get that hoe out of here. All right. Okay, we're getting there. Getting there. I just want to know you're authorized. Okay, I think we're close. Do we have everybody for 7? 10. Close. We'll take it. Now, if we were to make it a take-home test, that would mean that you would have until a week from next, instead of doing it on next Wednesday, you would have until the following Tuesday to get it done until that Tuesday night deadline.
Is it like a time test?
It'll be a time test, so it would have 110 minutes, just like you're in class. So, and I would say that you could use a page of notes, but the thing is then, that's going to put you in that ethical quandary. You know, when you're at home, I know it's a lot harder to not look at anything when you're taking a test, and you want to not look at anything because you really want to be testing yourself. So, all right, based on all of those quandary of questions, there's not too much to it.
False.
True, false, true, false. Look at it, made yes, sorry. Made yes red and no blue, which is the opposite, I know, of how we would think about things.
I mean, usually no it's red and yes it's green.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay, so I think that that's going to be a good solution for us. I'll just change dates and make everything to where that's a test to be taken at home. So you'll be getting a bunch more Canvas messages about all those things getting set up for you. Yes, there's.
Dumb question about that. Does
Did
that
you
imply that?
win?
Does that imply that we will not have to come in here on Wednesday?
No, it does not imply that. That implies
We
that we
still
would
need to
use
come
that class time to continue on and make sure that everybody's comfortable with all the concepts. Do what?
We see who got first.
Yeah, they didn't score. It didn't score you, so there is no first.
Hold up.
But we shouldn't have to work through the whole 2 hours like we had to, Dominic. So that, oh, it didn't even tell you who is the fastest clicker. Do what? You guys would have to do it again to see. Oh, look.
Oh, see, you can't beat our previous, so.
Oh, that's awesome. We have to try that with the statement one. And see if we can, I don't know what it does. Try it.
I'm just spamming.
See how fast you can click. Mouse breakage. I think you broke it. I don't know what you did to it.
Oh, what?
Ah! It switched him too.
How did you manage my three?
It doubled you up. Get out of here. Have a great weekend. We'll plan on that. Thank you guys for your input. We will get out of here when it gets too hot next week instead of staying forever. Yep, we'll just change that unit exam.
that's not till next week.
Right, won't affect till next week.
So I found out what caused that error. So that project that loaded.
Hmm.
When I closed out Visual Studio, I went to reopen the file, but I accidentally changed the name in it, so it unloaded it.
Oh,
It
okay.
thought it didn't exist
So you got it.
anymore.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering about, I noticed that the thing about taking a Python course on that website or whatever is an extra credit. It's not an
I
extra
should
credit
have
option
deleted
anymore.
it. Yeah, because the Python was for the 120 class.
Oh,
So
okay.
you guys, I don't care if you did the Python one. And they don't have a C# one, or I would have changed it. So that's why I copied the thing. So I just changed it to Java for the Java class. But we don't really have an option out
I
there.
figured, I was like, oh,
unfortunately.
we get extra credit for learning another language.
Uh-huh.
So I was working on it,
Were you? Because I mean, I don't care. I can leave it out there if you were looking.
but not worth it. But I also had another question. Are there like open lab hours here, like times to come?
Well, I'm usually here between the 8 o'clock class and my afternoon class. So like from 10:30 to 12:30 on this day, and 10:30 to 11:30 on Tuesday and Thursdays. And then I'm usually here for a while after the Java class on Tuesday and Thursday. But no, we don't have any specific
Right.
times where it's open.
So I was thinking it'd be
for other
better,
classes.
for me personally, my suggestion would be better to take a test here than because I can't guarantee that I won't get interrupted.
Right, and what'll happen to you and stuff. So you can make it take it at the testing center.
Okay.
So I can just send a form over there telling them that you're going to come over
Mhm.
to take it. So do you want it to just be on Wednesday, or do you want it to be Wednesday, Thursday, or
I
Friday?
see. I
next
figure out.
week?
I think. Are we going to be doing that for all the tests? Because
No, just for
Okay.
this one, just
Okay.
because we've had such a messed up
okay,
schedule.
this one
With
I
our
may
ice
actually be able
day
to
and-
take it home because
Okay.
my whole family's on vacation.
Oh, good. So they're out of your hair.
Right.
Well,
So
you
this
just
may
let
be
me
the one
know.
then.
Just
Okay.
email me, because yeah, we can always set it up at the test center, and then you
Okay.
can go over there anytime when it's convenient for you and take it. So
Thank you.
no problem. That'll set it up. But yeah, we shouldn't do this anymore if we don't have any more snow days,
Right,
and I'm not
right.
having any more surgery.
No more surgery.
I'm telling them no.
My mom just had to have, she had that diverticular, well, I think I
Oh,
told you
yeah,
about email,
yeah.
to tell you, yeah, she had to have that. That was a nightmare.
So what did she have surgery?
Yeah, they took out like
Oh.
a section of her colon. But they said it should fix it. Like people don't have it after that. She's had it like 5
Really?
times in the last 18 months.
Oh no,
But
it's awful.
I just wanted, I know you had mentioned at the beginning of class, but so as long as like I had submitted way before the deadline a hypergrade, done the REPL, but again, when I was at my lunch break, I realized I didn't do the program template submission or write how much time it took me on Canvas, but I won't lose points
No, you
for
won't
that
lose
as long as they
points,
were submitted the
especially
original way.
because there just isn't a good way to do it with hypergrade, since you can get those free late day passes. I go ahead and put the due date in Canvas just so you know when it's due, but they won't.
But I didn't
speak to
use
each
one of
other.
those late day passes
That's
because
all
I had
right,
it in
right.
time, but
so,
I didn't
so that's why
take
I
the
can,
screenshot, and
Yeah.
I just
but
forgot.
that's
we had
why
to
I
do that. It's
never
too much.
count
So
late in Canvas
Okay.
stuff
So
on
as long
your
as we-
assignments.
Future reference, as long as the REPL's done in time and the hypergrade's turned in on time, if we'll obviously try to do the Canvas
Right.
stuff, but if you
So
happen
like
to
if I go
forget
to
it, so-
grade and I see that you don't have the Canvas stuff submitted, I'll dock points, but I'm usually far enough behind that that's not an issue.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
do you think that it's going to be, my
Yeah, I mean, she's
brother-in-law
back
has it
home.
as well.
She's back home.
Curious.
I've never seen her in so much pain. I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
And then this last time, like it got abscessed. So like the big thing is it's those little pockets they fill with fluid. It can be very toxic if they burst. So that's why they keep, I mean, I guess your body naturally fights it off, but it's very painful. So they give you pain meds, and then they want to keep you on antibiotics, especially when they get abscess in case those burst. So like if it's not, doesn't become abscess, I think they usually in and out, get it in, they'll keep you for a night, monitor you, run those tests, CT scan, I think it was, and then send you home with antibiotics, pain meds. But then she had to come back. So that was like 2 weeks ago. And then she came back, it got worse. They saw his abscess, so they kept her. And then because it's happened so many times in the last year and a half, she had surgery.
Yeah.
I don't think they normally just do the surgery.
It has to be really
It
bad.
has to have happened a
With
few
my
times.
brother-in-law, when
quite
it
a few
happened
times.
the first time, it was, I don't know. And I mean, obviously you had fungal infection, but he went to Cox, to the emergency room, and he was like, I guess they were like in their 40s, but you know, I mean, our family looks young. So he looked younger, But he kept saying he was in such terrible pain. They let him sit in the emergency room for like 6 hours.
Yeah,
He
my
almost
mom sat in
died.
there for like 5 hours the first night we went
Did
in.
she?
We
Well,
were
when
down
they-
at the lake at my aunt's, and we had to leave abruptly, drive
Oh my
up,
gosh.
and then we got at the hospital at 6:30, and they saw her. It was like 1 or 2 in the morning before they
Well,
saw
the
her.
one nurse told my brother-in-law, actually apologized to him and said they thought he was just there for drugs because he kept saying he was just in pain. And so my brother-in-law, we tell that to all the family. Don't ever say you're in pain in the emergency room because apparently
Right,
they
'cause
make you
all that.
wait forever.
I mean,
So
you would
and
think
she'd
they
already
would-
been there
I mean, my
before.
mom's
Well,
almost
these
60
nut-
years old.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
these
she's keeled over in
the
the.
oxycodone addicts are all
But
ages.
she was like
so.
keeled over in the
Isn't it awful?
waiting room. I mean,
Yeah.
couldn't do
Well, that's what the
anything, you
nurse
know?
told Steve. Said we almost killed you, letting you wait out there because it had. I guess it had exploded.
Oh,
on
his
him.
head, yeah.
And she said we almost killed you because everybody thought you wanted drugs. So they opened him up and like left him lay in the hospital bed for 5 or 6 days because he didn't have insurance. And the doctor actually came in and told him that if he had insurance, he would have to do that surgery. And he said, you're almost better off to not do it. So that was like 7 or 8 years ago. But then this year he started having trouble again. So
They say it will come back.
eventually, ugh, scary stuff. You too. Yes, sir. You think Cox is that bad? I don't think